You also look at what the Biden administration, CDC, by having this moratorium where they couldn't, where a lot of the people who own these places couldn't get access to rent, so couldn't get access to rent, so couldn't get access to rent, so.
Yes, folks. Welcome to the show. Making sure we can stand in the way of rentiers getting access to rent to the best of our abilities. I'm Matt Leck. With me, David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, man. Yeah, that is my life's mission.
You know, I mean, we're gonna take a little pause here before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. We got Matt Binder coming on later. And we got a little bit of a look back at the infrastructure, well, the bridge collapse most recently, and the context of what we've been doing on infrastructure. Is it enough, or is it just a meager kick of the can, like an old person kicking a can down an icy road? Is that what we did? That's what we did. But anyway, first, let's just go back on this DeSantis clip. And for those of you, I mean, I just appreciate access to care. Became a big buzzword phrase that you could tell Democrats had shopped around in their focus groups prior to, oh shit, Bernie Sanders is going to run. We need something to compete with Medicare for all, and they landed on access to care. And honestly, like that fact alone, that signal, like that makes me feel like aliens do exist. I don't know how they got here, if it was UFOs or if they like have some spiritual beings, but like, who are these people that they thought like access to, like, I want healthcare. Like I want, if something happens to me, I want that to be covered by, I want that to be cared for by society.
It's one of those things that's really cheap to say and even cheaper to hear.
And apparently it seems like it's like worth its weight in gold to political people. So here's just DeSantis talking about the fact that we had eviction moratorium again, and not even like put up by the Democrats. This is by the CDC, which under Trump did this moratorium. The Biden administration neglected to continue it politically, so it's just like it got lapsed. And also, we should point out, people have been getting evicted in all sorts of ways this entire time. So just because the official moratorium has been
for sure,
right, like landlords, they've been all right, and they've had all avenues of assistance too. So the fact that they can't kick people out on the street during a pandemic is a big problem for them. But just to take another look at this.
CDC. You also look at what the Biden administration did with CDC by having this moratorium where they couldn't, where a lot of the people who own these places couldn't get access to rent, so couldn't get access to rent, so couldn't get access to rent.
So. Also, the Trump stuff with
I was about to say in the battle, because this is like the new like Politico narrative right now. It's like, who's going to win Florida,
exactly,
DeSantis or Trump? I'll tell you, just on body language alone, Trump's got it in the bag.
Well, I mean, that's because DeSantis is like trying to copy him. I highly recommend the Vic Berger video investigation into this phenomenon, where DeSantis literally started adopting all of Trump's mannerisms with regards to like my hand placement. Like Trump is a Hollywood actor. Okay. I don't know what DeSantis's background is, but it's not that.
Yeah. I mean, the access to rent is, if only it meant the same thing to landlords that it does to people, right? Because access to healthcare means, you're not going to get it. Access to rent, I mean, the state has really gone out of its way to make sure that people who own property and benefit off of rents are taken care of.
Yeah, and like there's been times where I've gone fairly hard at landlords, I think, as all leftists with Twitter accounts may have over the past few years, especially in the context of this. And like the like small mom and pop one, it's like, look, I'm in a situation like that. I like them. They work fine. But like fundamentally, you have to side with the people who are going to get thrown out on the street versus the people who can just own stuff and can decide to throw those people out because they need access to rent. You just you can't. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts about that sort of dynamic. So, and it's infuriating because like DeSantis still bitching and moaning about it, and the those moratorium are going out of date.
Oh,
If they
it's
haven't
I mean
already.
it's horrendous. I mean, I believe in Harris County, which is where Houston is, there are 8,000 filings for evictions. I mean, to be in this moment of time when basically these few years of the pandemic, which prevented some people from getting evicted from their home, now the floodgates are really opening up to come at those people, and it's going to be a mass um, you know uh, forced homelessness campaign by the state to kick all of those people out of their homes. To be sitting here right now and talking about the difficulty that the landlords had to go through when they didn't have access to the rent is just rich to me.
And this is a choice. We've talked about this in the previous episode about, are we going to choose the bankers or the people who live in the homes, regardless to like who we're going to bail out here. And we are deciding like that we could just, all those like poor landlords could just get checks from the government. Government's been writing checks like crazy. Like CARES was like $10,000 for corporations for like a few $1,000s you got, right? So that could be done. But there's this other element where we like the brutality of it in this country. If you want to drive people back into the workforce, the eviction is another way to do that, right? Like that.
Eviction is a huge part of it.
Exactly.
Because, just one thing like to note about evictions is like obviously the violence of it, of being thrown out of your home, and the embarrassment, and in a lot of cases they confiscate your things, which is horrible enough. But on top of it, the fact that it gets to be a black mark over your any kind of rental applications that you make in the future is also despicable. Because that means that, one, for a lot of places, you're not going to get approved. And when you do get approved, they're going to hike up all of the payments that are necessary for you to stay there, putting a burden on people in the worst position to, be able to handle it.
Yeah. So anyway, a funny bit of language underlined a brutal reality that should be addressed by the fucking party in power, and they basically endorse.
No, I mean, sorry, not to bring it up again, but like this is literally like it's funny because DeSantis in a way does sound like that's a very kind of Democratic talking point, access to rent, like the very ethereal bit of it. But effectively, this is what the Biden-Harris administration has been all about. Has been a return to normalcy, a return to making those payments. I mean, that's been the underlying position of their pandemic response for the vast majority of Biden's presidency. So this is one of those moments where you actually see, despite the kind of theater of it all, like a very great bipartisan consensus on looking out for that class of people.
This actually foreshadows what we're going to be talking about in the post game with the Blake Masters, Madison Cawthorn clip.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about how they love Joe Manchin, the statesman. That's the realignment, folks. And it's funny that they have this. That's the worst. This is the worst kind of kayfabe, right? Where both of these vampires, the Joe Biden administration and DeSantis, they act like there's some sort of big fight going on, right? There's some big fight over and I would throw in, like, not to open this kind of worms, but like Joe Biden coming out and say Spotify lean on Joe Rogan much. Like, motherfucker, let Neil Young do that. Like, you control the White House. Fucking you respond to COVID. Anyway,
absolutely, it's a joke.
Get too off track there, but anyway, let's get on to infrastructure before we have Matt Binder on. There was a bridge collapse in Pennsylvania, Frick Park, a 447-foot long bridge collapsed. It's unclear whether this is related to or coincidental with a pipeline burst. It's unclear about that. But let's before we go into some more details about that, let's look at President Joe here at the scene. He was there to tout the accomplishments of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and I think that this is like. And they're going to try to, what else do they have to run on, right? And the truth is, like, this is probably more than has been done in previous administrations for infrastructure, but that's because we have been like just horribly letting this stuff deteriorate. But anyway, here's Joe. There's a few interesting parts in this point we're hit with him on the scene here. And I like how I don't want to cast any insinuations, but it starts right with him tapping like a first responder on the side. And I just think, like, as when you choose to like when to edit trim clips, it's just interesting. But here's this.
Mr. President,
thank you very much. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
And even, I mean, this is, first of all, these guys deserve an incredible amount of credit here. And that while this is going on, They tell me
That for those listening, these are cops surrounding him, so it's the cops that deserve the credit.
the gas leak was. Explain what you said. Noise.
It was just a very loud, like a jet engine.
And you can see
Gas was
you see it coming out on the other side of the concrete there, this side, up by the crane. And were you worried that there had been an explosion or that there had
That's a good question.
We weren't sure whether the gas had caused this or whether the leak was, a result of the bridge collapse. So we just weren't sure about that.
How long did it take to get the company to shut off the gas?
Probably
About a half hour.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was just continuing outside of the.
So there's obviously there's another line right here
On
as
this
well.
side as well, yeah.
So that was rushing out. So
And it's probably too early for joggers to be done.
there was a few joggers actually. There was a few. One of them actually helped us get some people out of the car. So yeah.
It's a miracle, Mr. President. It's a miracle.
It really is.
He's got a hand.
It really is. Astonishing. You all realize I've been coming to Pittsburgh a long time, and as a former Pennsylvanian. But I didn't realize there are literally more bridges in Pittsburgh than any other city in the world.
Jesus Christ.
More than in Venice. I knew there were a lot of bridges. I had no idea that. And we're gonna fix them all. Not a joke. This is going to be a gigantic change. And
So Joe is from Pennsylvania. I'll just say, like, if you watch any Pittsburgh Steelers game, you will have heard that trivia factoid over and over again. It's one of the main things about Pittsburgh. There's a few things he said there. One, like, and he also said, we're going to give you, the cops, more money too. And look, the problem is they're not going to fix all the bridges. Here's all the bridges that need fixing. This is just Allegheny County. Right. And so Pennsylvania is particularly bridgy, very hilly area. But this is a countrywide problem. You look at, I would actually, if you drive over lots of bridges, for your commute, I'd be interested to hear back from folks if you do a little scan on some of the conditions of some of those bridges, and what the situation is. But to get into some specifics here, this bridge particularly had been cited as poor. There's a bunch others like it. There's no reason to suspect this one was any worse than the other ones, which is a little bit concerning. There had been money set aside, $25 million in federal funds for this. 1 in 8 Pennsylvania bridges are rated poor. That's like thousands besides Frick in Pennsylvania alone. So, like, when the bipartisan infrastructure bill touts thousands of bridges getting repairs, like, I'm glad they're getting that money. We have that's a drop in the bucket, right?
Yeah.
Like they said, you're driving on bridges with advanced deterioration of structural elements. That's what this one was specifically. And I have this other clip here from a journalist, Stephanie Strasberg, I believe. And this is a mother named Melissa. And this is just her in front of the situation. I think this is a better clip to give people the idea of the stakes here than maybe that Joe Biden, glad handing clip.
Take my daughter across this bridge like every day. And it could have been any of us sitting at that light. I mean, thank God for the delay, because there's always school buses sitting at that light. There's schools, elementary schools all along this road. It's really scary.
And so that bridge was only built in 1970. That's only 50 years old, right? And you hear a lot when you're hearing this touting of this bill that it's a once in a lifetime investment. And we've talked about that. First of all, I don't know about you, but I want to live longer than 50 years, just to use it as this scale. But when you hear them say that, it's basically an apology to, like, for spending so much money on this stuff, right? Like, it's like they're trying to, like, it's not really actually trying to excite the base. It's trying to apologize to the investor class.
Well, this is the thing that's so frustrating about, like, the size of that bill. And I don't know if you have it in the show notes, but we have a kind of graph that breaks down just how much that bill has been broken down. Like argue down over this period of time. But it is funny, people like, it's like one of those things that people sort of treat as apolitical, right? Everybody wants infrastructure, but it's just like, oh, this is too partisan of a time for us to be able to really do anything about it. That's not true. The reason that we haven't seen any kind of massive infrastructure spending is not because, the country has gotten too partisan over the past few years, but rather, and I can't read the name there, but could you give a shout out? He actually runs a really great Substack.
Yeah, Steven Semler.
Yeah, who runs a really great Substack y'all should check out. But this is a pretty strong, again, I can't read it, but if...
yeah, I can do it. So the original place it started here. And by the way, this is already way smarter than like Bernie Sanders. And this is credited as Bernie Sanders' bill. Bernie Sanders was 7 trillion. So let's forget about that. But so Biden's infrastructure plan, because Biden didn't call it that enough, frankly, at the beginning part. But anyway, March 31st, 2.25 trillion. May 21st, 1.7 trillion. June 3rd, 1 trillion. June 24th, 578 billion. July 28th, 550 billion.
And the note here, again, is that they end up with this number 1.2, and that comes with a lot of spending that was already planned, that was already going to happen, and it's spread out over about a decade, right? So when you're actually looking at its impact, it's nowhere near the task nor the moment. And what as I was saying a second ago about how when people say, the reason we can't get infrastructure done is because the country's too partisan. That's not the fact. There is a class dynamic here, a class basis for why we don't see infrastructure done. And that is because there are certain groups of people who want to profit immensely off of the privatization of roads. And there are groups of people who want to refuse to see any kind of serious national social spending. And neither of those two groups are represented by the vast majority of the population. These are a few very powerful special interests in the country. Now, of course, increasing infrastructure certainly will help out some groups of capitalists. But as you've seen, the war on state and local governments across this country, there are very specific interests that want to see these things continue to crumble so that there is more privatization of these road systems paid for by the government, but are allowed to be allow the private sector to profit from them. And the Biden administration's infrastructure plan is not immune to this either. It includes provisions, to allow for more of these kind of privatization efforts, wherein the government constructs a road or some infrastructure, a private company comes over and extracts tolls and rents from the people who are utilizing it, and then it falls into such a state of disrepair one day, then they sell it back to the government, right? I mean, it's a really great scheme if you can get in on it. But this is what's happened when you have a country that is completely a ruling class in this country, particularly a ruling political class in this country, that has completely turned their back on any kind of concept of mass politics. And the thing about the Biden administration's infrastructure deal, you saw it both with that and Build Back Better plan, is like you can see how there's some inspiration that you get from them from like the New Deal. The idea was like they were going to be big and bold, but they had no coalition. They had no rootedness in any of the communities that need this kind of spending to be able to deliver, to be able to, overcome the cries from within their own party, and certainly with, across the capitalist class as a whole. And that's like the real lesson here when it comes to the Biden administration is, the Democratic Party has spent the vast majority of my lifetime, and particularly the past decade, all of its efforts in trying to destroy grassroots working class movements within that organization and adjacent to it. And then when they come into power, they're unable to put any of these kind of things through, even these kind of things that are desperately needed. Like infrastructure is something that everybody in this country recognizes is a problem. People can see it just if you look at the design of a lot of the bridges and buildings around you. Like, wow, that is all really interesting. That, but that's very clearly was designed in the 50s or in the 60s, right? Like, where is that kind of brand new infrastructure? And it's not as prevalent as it should be because these things have been underfunded, both by like an ideological commitment to neoliberalism, but also to a commitment of saying that like the only way that we're going to be able to provide for these kind of services for people is by relying on gas taxes and things like that too, right? Never trying to make the rich and powerful pay for the roads that they use, but rather saying, oh, well, the problem is that the American people won't accept higher taxes on gasoline, and that's why the roads are in such disrepair. Right? Again, a completely BS excuse.
Not just that we've been letting rich people get away with and their businesses get away with too less taxation, that haven't been handling this enough. And like, I just want to point this, if in case people think this is just sour grapes, it's not just me saying that this is not enough. This is Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. The federal investments coming to Pennsylvania are significant, but they simply won't fully fund our multi-billion-dollar infrastructure funding gap, which continues to grow. So again, like we have to. And we talked about this, we have this clip here, and I just want to play this a little bit from the end of when we talked about the Memphis bridge, that all of a sudden people noticed just had a sheer break, a crack in one of the beams. And this is what we said at the end of this, and the advice we had for the demon rats. Yeah, so Biden should go without Republicans and pass something, and
everybody wants it. It's one of the easiest sells in politics because everybody knows the roads suck, and there could be a lot. There's a lot of repairs that are needed, and there's a lot of things that haven't been done that need to be done too.
Yep. So yeah, that's where we stand there. And also, if one of these bridges collapses and the Democrats haven't passed anything on this, no one's going to give a fuck about the Republicans, right? This is going to be the Democrats' failure to have addressed this stuff when they had the chance. Like, you have 2 straight presidents that come into office with all 3 branches of government, right? Like, to your point about the gridlock, like, that's the gridlock. And so the once in a lifetime response we did was a kick of the can that even the Pennsylvania governor says in his press release. Yeah, like, it's nice, guys. Don't let this national campaigning of the Democratic Party and their email efforts get in the way of the reality of even the situation this state is under.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to talk tomorrow. By the way, I'm doing a stream, a storm stream. I'm thinking 4 Central, maybe. We'll see if we're able to. But I was going to talk about a couple of local things that are going on here, and like look at like the local dynamics when it comes to funding, even within Texas right now, and the fight over control over our roads and our communities. In San Antonio, the state government essentially is refusing to allow the city to control a road that is, again, a very downtown area, is very much needed to be sort of reimagined, particularly in a way that is going to be more friendly to pedestrians and cyclists, instead of just being a massive highway. And the state government is sort of swooping in out of nowhere and preventing them from being able to do that. I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about the way that the Biden administration is planning on even going through with this infrastructure deal, without the kind of political coalition that you had in the New Deal and even this, under Eisenhower, it's going to be rife with some of the nastiest characters preventing us from being able to do the things that are necessary, right? And this is like the big problem with the way that so many of these, neoliberals and particularly people in the Biden administration think about politics, is that they think that they can do this without any kind of like mass mobilization, and that they can ignore like the political material realities on the ground across the country.
Even Eisenhower knew it needed to be a fucking revolution. Like, Eisenhower, I can't remember where I read this, but he was motivated by, when he was in the fucking military, he found out that it takes 62 days to cross the country in a military caravan. He's like, well, we clearly can't accept this, so we need to get some fucking highways out there. And that's right. Like, we did all that in that part of, that's like the most I guess doing shit the American state's been since it got rid of slavery, and you have to, like, that stuff deteriorates, you have to maintain it, and you can't just expect like to start just to ride that shit into the future.
No, that's what I mean. Like, you have to be very clear about what you're trying to do, and the Biden administration is not all so convoluted. Like, again, there's a lot of ways that you can sort of galvanize the public around you on this, and instead it's just sort of this kind of wishy-washy stuff from Biden, and then absolute freaks and ghouls like Buttigieg out there, saying that what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to increase, consumption tax on like everyday working class Americans, right? Like, that's their kind of strategy, and that's not
okay, McKinsey. Yeah, sorry.
That's good.
Let's get to our guest here. We'll do a quick little pitch. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning, folks. We had a great conversation with Kevin Bird, the Bird Maniac, on genetic determinism and the radical science tradition. If you're like Stephen Jay Gould and those folks, you'll want to hear about the larger context that they were operating in. Joining us now is, many of you may know him as my predecessor on the Majority Report. He is now the host of both Doomed and the new podcast, Scam Economy. Matt Binder, welcome to Left Reckoning.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight.
I've already told you this before, but I am a huge fan of the branding. I like your little background you got there now. But Scam Economy, it is a great name because look, it's more and more people are getting scammed these days, it feels like.
Right. I mean, it's a good name for an entire industry that's coming up. That's basically one big Ponzi or MLM scam. So yeah.
I wanted to just note this because like we've talked about Bitcoin and Web3 and that stuff on the show. And for a long time, it was like something I had like, I thought it was bogus, like privately, but I was like, oh, I don't want to do videos on it or cover it because it's boring. And the people who are into it are like way too into it. But it started to like pop up in the real world like a little bit too much. One of the big catalysts, at least for Matt and I, to start doing more on it was when we saw some people saying that like, oh, what the people in Palestine need is more Bitcoin. That was sort of the last straw for me. But here in Texas, this is something that's just notable. Because this is happening right now, where everyone is like, it's panic here. People are very worried about the electricity staying on over the next couple of days, and it looks like we're going to be okay. So don't go out and freak out, folks. But there's a lot of fear that people do have because our electrical system here is in such disarray, and it's frustrating because so little was done by the government here to deal with it. Pretty much the only things that we had were like cosmetic changes to like to ERCOT. But let me show you this. This is Governor Greg Abbott, who again has done almost nothing, inviting these little freaks onto our grid. So Texas Governor Abbott turns to Bitcoin miners to bolster the grid in his reelection. This came out recently, this story, but they've been having these negotiations for a long while now. And the Bloomberg article is actually quite triumphant in a kind of BS way. I'll just tell people right now, the argument here from the Bitcoin people is that they'll be using so much more electricity, right? That there'll be more reserves, and then when we need it, they can just shut off their little Bitcoin mines. But again, a completely ridiculous workaround to a problem that is again not just our capacity, but it's the fact that we're over reliant on natural gas that has been weatherized. Anyways, I just bring it up because like there is like a news plug right here for like not just like this stuff is a scam, but it's dangerous, it's harmful to us, and it's putting us all at risk.
Right. It's amazing to see the governor of a state, groveling to any sort of, executive or CEO or anyone is sad enough. But then there's just something about, a governor having to grovel to Bitcoin miners, begging them to please don't put so much power on our grid. Well, what do these Bitcoin miners do? What service do they provide? Are they providing some sort of do they create a product? Do they provide some sort? Maybe they create some sort of service that people are entertained by, or they use it for their work, their business. No, it's literally just these people. Really, what you see now, it's almost getting beyond that. I mean, it's been beyond that, but some people do have money to do it on their own. But we're literally talking about mega capitalists here who are creating these giant rigs inside what is essentially like what you would use for like a storage facility or something, like huge warehouses. And they're just buying up all these graphics cards and processing power. And they create these huge mining rigs. And in the case of Bitcoin, what they do is they mine Bitcoin. And to do so, what they basically do is they solve these extremely difficult mathematical equations that are specifically made to be difficult just so they do all this work, so they can make Bitcoin transactions get entered onto the blockchain. Basically, they create a new block on the chain. And when they do this, they get rewarded with a little bit of Bitcoin. And they're spending tons and tons of money to make these rigs bigger, because as more Bitcoin is mined, these mathematical equations get more difficult. And less and less Bitcoin are rewarded as time goes on. But it certainly is a profitable venture if they're spending all this money to mine these Bitcoin. And they have to be getting enough Bitcoin for it to be profitable in return.
That's one aspect that really upsets me about it. It's already a perverted utopia with the whole like solving math equations thing. because I remember having a PS3, I think it was, and they had this protein folding thing where you could download this and you could decide to burn energy at your house, but just keep your PlayStation on, solving these equations that were like some sort of gene research. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like figuring out how like chromosomes and shit work. It's above my pay grade, frankly. But like I felt like I was doing something because like science blogs were like, hey, this really helps us. And now it's just like pointless shit, basically aimed at scarcity. You know, right? Because this is like we only want a certain number of it, so we have to. How can we do a scarcity? Well, you have to. There's only a certain amount that can be coined. I don't know. Let's bring it back to a more. Go ahead.
But you know what? It's really complicated on purpose. This isn't a system that's so complicated because it needs to be. We're not, you know, this isn't rocket science. It's purposefully difficult for people to understand because they don't want you to get basically how pointless and convoluted it all is. They throw all this tech jargon at you and they say either, oh, you're not going to get it, or if you criticize it, you don't understand the tech behind it. But that's all done so they can it's the curtain, you know, like the Wizard of Oz. Like, don't look behind the curtain because there's nothing all that great behind it. That's what this all is. They don't want you to understand it. And it's, you know, it does help them because they could just, you know, easily just brush away any criticism of it from someone who isn't like, you know, a cryptographer or like a hardcore programmer. But you know, if you don't know what's going on, if this is all too much for you to understand, if you're like, you know, a layperson and every day, you know, just someone going about your day, you see a crypto story, you want to try to get it, you don't get it. So they don't need you. They don't want you to get it. Just know that you put your money in and you'll make a lot of money. That's what they like you to know about it.
Well, that is the message, right? Like this was Buco Dolores to the moon. You're gonna get some money for nothing and chicks for free with this sort of stuff, right?
Right. Well, the chicks part they can't promise because not that many.
Well, digital. It'll be like metaverse chicks, right? Like,
right. There's been a number of NFT projects where it's like women in NFT, and the art is all like drawings of like women, and then you find out the people behind the project are all a bunch of guys. It's amazing. It's like, you know, they even try to take advantage of like I don't know, like they try to weaponize identity politics even here in NFT world and in crypto world and Web3 land. And you know,
Reese Witherspoon, right? She's like in it for like the girls. Like you want
to, yeah, she's pushing.
Or LeBron James, when LeBron James was saying he's going to, you know, help out inner city kids or whatever, he said something along those lines, disadvantaged communities, right?
There's no way these celebrities know what's going on here. I'm sorry, they just don't have any clue. I would love to see one of them talk about it in person, like a camera in front of them and their mouths moving to whatever they're saying, because it's the tweets that they're all talking about crypto and NFTs. You know, have you seen that clip of Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon?
Yes.
I mean,
I was just going to say, we can't play that because I think we'll get a copyright strike, but people should go look that up. It is fucking insane.
That's what happens when these celebrities have the camera on them and have to talk about this. They talk about how cute their apes are because they've got no clue. They've got no idea.
Yeah. So I have there's a great section from this blog post by Max Reed, and I want to just read a section of it. I think Max was an old like Gawker writer, but here's a section from his Substack. If you pay attention to both the Hollywood trades and the crypto press and smoke enough weed, you can begin to pick out the contours of an expanding, interconnected, celebrity-based Web3 financial cultural complex. Did you know, for example, that Jimmy Fallon is represented by CAA, which is an investor in the NFT marketplace OpenSea, and which recently signed a deal to represent the NFT collector? I'm not going to say the name. Some dumb digital shit. Who owns the NFTs from Bored Ape Yacht Club and World of Women? Did you know that another CAA client, Ashton Kutcher, is also an investor in OpenSea through his company Sound Ventures, or that Kutcher will be starring in a Netflix rom-com called Your Place or Mine with Reese Witherspoon, the most prominent owner of World of Women NFTs, who also happens to be married to a CAA agent, or that the people behind World of Women and Bored Ape Yacht Club are both represented by Kutcher's partner in Sound Ventures, the music manager Guy Oseary. Did you know that Oseary's other major venture these days is Pure Pop, a platform for connecting TikTok influencers to celebrities for collaborations, a platform used by none other than Paris Hilton. And I think like this is like a celebrity grift. They're realizing we can turn attention into money with the little like instead of two, like Paris Hilton would be coming out with a fucking tulip if this was like the 1730s, right?
Right.
Like exactly.
That Max Read piece came out today.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean it should be obvious to anybody, but I last week on the first episode of Scam Economy, either on the show or in the post show, I was talking about how there's no doubt that you're going to find that all of these celebrities pushing crypto are represented by the same agency, definitely. But I wouldn't even be surprised if the same exact agents were all involved with these specific celebrities. I mean, it's so obvious. These celebrities have no idea what's going on here. Their agents are telling them, "Hey, this is a new thing. They're paying you to promote it."
Sorry about that. I'm glad you guys kept going because my screen just completely went black there. But okay, can you just repeat that for me, Binder?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it was obvious to me that all these celebrities who were pushing this stuff out of the blue, that there was some sort of agency or specific talent agents behind it all, because I mean, they have no idea what they're talking about. They're just given a product. They're told you're being paid such and such for it. Go out there and promote it. I mean, look, all right, this is amazing. The other day I was looking through Cameo, the site where you can get a celebrity to give you or you can gift someone a greeting for like, $100, $200, $300, whatever the celebrity charges. And they record a video, they send it to you, and there you go. You could give it to someone as a gift. Happy birthday, uncle, from Mick Foley of the WWE.
Right.
And it's a cool idea, whatever, but no harm, no foul there. But they also have, because they realized that businesses were taking advantage of these really cheap pricings, and they have a business pricing now. And what I found was a lot of like meme coins, basically coins created just for pure quick pump and dump schemes for the most part. They go ahead and they purchase celebrity cameos and give the celebrities a script, and these celebrities just read it off. They don't give a shit. They're getting paid $200, $300, $400, $500, whatever for this business cameo. And they get paid for what takes up probably less than 10 minutes of their time. And those shit coins put together a little compilation of like LeVar Ball and one of the side cast members from The Office. And they talk about how great this NFT project is, or this new meme coin is. And boom, everyone goes home happy, of course, except for the people who see that video and then invest their money into that shit coin. And then they lose all their money when the founder pumps and dumps it and pulls all their money out.
The thing about like all of the Web3 stuff, and we can maybe zoom in a second, but like, is that one, I will just say we could talk about cryptocurrency like politically maybe later, but we've done a lot of that on this channel, and I feel like Matt and I are pretty comfortable in saying that like pretty much all of the political uses and ideas that people have when they say like we need cryptocurrency to revolutionize society are bullshit. But the second bit of it, like it as just like a financial instrument, the coins and NFTs in particular, all of these things are just are old scams that have happened in capitalism for a very long time that are now illegal. And like, because they are scams, and quite clearly they're scams because they're all about putting their Ponzi schemes, essentially putting money in at the front, hoping that you're in early and then you get out before the whole thing blows up. That's also a big part of like the celebrities pumping out their NFTs too, is they get them, sometimes, from these new companies for cheaper, for free, even if we're promoting them. And then they're able to sort of say like, you got to get into this. And then they're selling them quickly. But the thing about it is that this is just like a new, it feels new in some ways, and it feels even more absurd in a lot of ways. But these are just old ass kind of Ponzi scheme scams that have been going around for a long time.
Right. For people to really understand, like this is how this whole thing works. Basically, you buy a Bitcoin. You buy Bitcoin. And you put your money in, that money's gone, you get a Bitcoin in return. Now, this isn't like buying something or even like a tangible, like this is not buying a product, even a service that isn't tangible. This isn't even like Netflix. Because when you buy a product, when you buy some food or an action figure or a comic book, or you purchase a service, whether it be, your cable bill, your internet provider, your Netflix subscription, whatever, that's the end of the transaction. You pay them for providing you something. That's it. End of discussion. You get it. They get the money. Boom. Everyone's happy. With this, you get a Bitcoin when you put that Bitcoin. You can't do anything with it. You didn't buy a Bitcoin just so you could have a Bitcoin sitting on your computer or in your, your wallet. You bought it specifically in the hopes of turning around and selling it and making more than you put in. Now, how do you do that? Well, you need to sell it to somebody else who's willing to pay more for that Bitcoin than you did. Eventually, as this keeps going on, we're going to run out of people willing to pay more for that Bitcoin. And then everyone who's holding at the end there is going to be stuck losing money. Because when you make money in crypto, there's no revenue being generated that you're getting. You're not getting the fruits of your labor or the fruits of your company. It was hard work or whatever. Even if we want to talk in the current system we live in, which is that's how things work. What we get here is even more absurd. What we have here is you sell off, and you keep pumping it because you want more people to buy in, so that price goes up.
Sorry, Matt, something's going on with your audio. You're a bit crackly.
Yeah, well, if you could maybe,
Sorry.
let me see 1 second. Refresh that, but I do want to jump in on that point, and we can maybe bring it back to there. But like the arc of this whole crypto stuff to me has seemed to be like, okay, at the beginning of it, you have some tech early adopters that are, frankly, I mean, like I think the David Gerard point is right on, that they are like right wing. They're like basically like neo digital gold bugs. They want a hedge against inflation, right? But you have like certain tech adopters, but the real primitive accumulation phase, and David, you can correct me if I'm not using this correctly, but it was the drugs. It was, you could use this to sell drugs. And so a whole bunch of people started like getting a bunch of this stuff basically because it was an asset that you could use to try to like, get fucking drugs delivered to wherever the fuck you are through the mail. And like that capitalize that. And what happens when that stops being useful? Those assets have to try to become useful somehow. So you get all these different things, right? You get these all these different ways it could help decentralize things, which is like I've always said, if it was the 90s, they'd be calling it privatization, but decentralized, whatever that, like some sort of libertarian notion. You get that brings us to NFTs too, I think.
Right. How's my audio now, by the way?
Excellent.
Great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, we're basically the whole thing here. The thing that makes this the scam economy here is that you need to. It's an MLM. Like you need people to buy in. That's why no one just likes this stuff. Like you're a baseball fan. You like baseball. You collect Pokemon cards. You look for other people who like Pokemon cards, and that's even something that people speculate on too.
Right.
But no one's out there saying, "Oh, I need you more really into Pokemon cards. Come on, go buy some Pokemon cards. Go get a pack."
Yeah.
No one's doing that. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you could sell them and make a little bit of money, but there's a game you can play with them. There's other utility there. You can even look at them and they're very nice. Here, though, you need other people to buy in to make sure that what you put in doesn't end up being worthless. Yeah. The scam will run out eventually, and I'm not someone who pontificates on when that can be.
Yeah, I agree.
Really, I think a lot of people who are out there who criticize this stuff, not the really smart ones, but some people who just do that, try to look at when like Bitcoin drops in price and like, oh, look, there it goes. You can't really go by that. This stuff there's a whole industry propped up here now. You have major venture capitalists pouring money into this stuff. This isn't really, this isn't going anywhere. A bubble will eventually burst, but whether it'll completely disappear, people get into really dumb things and this could last for as long as who knows. But to be honest, the more widespread it becomes, that's what actually makes me want to talk about it more. Like when this all pops, that's if it ever happens or whenever it happens, great. I mean, maybe less people will get into it and less people will be scammed. It'll be a dying thing. But the bigger it gets, I think the critiques are that much more important.
I mean, this is the bit though that is so worrying about the moment that we're living through right now. I mean, there's big ass billboards all around Austin here. I'm telling you to get into Bitcoin, right? And what does that mean? Like, if you're somebody who owns a lot of Bitcoin, right, you need to have this new audience of people to be selling it to, and that is why, like, there's something that is so sinister, frankly, about like we're going to bring Bitcoin to everyday people. Whenever you see, particularly because not only Is it sort of bringing people in again to like your worthless asset that you sort of need to dump off on some people? But two, the vast majority of people don't have the capabilities to buy a Bitcoin, in what is called like a cold wallet, right? They go through a platform to buy it, which means that, they're paying fees and all of these other things on top of it, too, right? So there's this whole really like grubby economy in between just like somebody wanting to purchase it and, sell it, right? But the people who are really trying to push it in the popular culture right now are just bringing more and more people into it. Again, that's not like, obviously, if you want to see it as a system succeed, obviously you would think that, that's a good thing for you, right? But for the people who are the big whales, the people who are the big players, they're trying to come up with all these values. And that's why it's going to help out people in Palestine. That's why, supposedly, like, that's why it's going to help out people with their remittances. And that's why if you're a libertarian, it will help you hide your money from the government. And that's why if you're a socialist, it's going to help bring up, about the revolution, right? All these fantastical claims are just the kind of thing that you say if you're a salesman, trying to get people to buy your snake oil.
Right. The idea that it's going to help these countries where, the economy isn't stable and they don't have a stable currency. I mean, to me, that's always a funny argument because we're talking about in a lot of these instances where they're bringing this up, often you'll see them talk about like, crypto in Africa or in impoverished like, Central American or South American countries. Listen, if you're so worried about helping out those impoverished people, then why aren't you dealing with the basics where they don't even have general access to the internet in general? They don't have access to a mobile phone or some sort of electronic device where they can even store this stuff. But the reason you're not dealing with that is because that's not what you're pumping to make you money. I mean, whenever you see a crypto that's pushing some sort of charity aspect, you can know that it is especially scamming. Because if there was something, if you were investing in something, you would expect your investment to go into building that company or that product or whatever you invested in. But these charity aspects of crypto are basically taking your money that you're investing and then going around and giving it away after taking their fees, obviously, or after using the charity aspect to market their coin and not actually, doing anything with your investment for you. I mean, it really is the most ridiculous thing. Like if you see, this is all a scam, but if you see a charity marketing ploy with anything involved with crypto, know that you can just go ahead and give your money directly to a charity that supports whatever that crypto claims to be supporting, and you'll be doing much better because that's basically what they're doing. They're taking your money and giving it away.
Yeah, I would quickly echo your point about like not being too confident about when this is going to end. There's an example from stock shorting. This guy, I think his name is Bill Ackman, but he's shorting a multi-level marketing firm called Herbalife. And he's just assumed because he's right, it is a pyramid scheme, basically, right? I mean, allegedly, again, if Herbalife is listening to this, but like, I think he's right about what he's saying, right? In case of a legit company, but that doesn't mean that money can allow bullshit to defy gravity for longer than you can want it to, right? And and I agree. Like, there's two things, and it was like when it started talking about the social justice stuff and trying to get in on that crowd, I think that's really despicable. And then the other thing that really pissed me off is when I go to fucking Paul George's Twitter account and he's got an ape or whatever his one is. And it's like I don't want Steph Curry. I don't want none of these guys. I want to go there and see their number or their face. I don't want to see some fucking, bullshit scam on their pages. But that sort of brings us up to this new thing that happened recently. And I think this is like maybe I don't know if it's you know better than me, but like as far as like things backfiring for NFTs, this seems like a huge one. This hit piece thing. So here's a Dan Beckner of Wolf Parade. And he's one of many artists I saw doing this exact thing, but he's about the funniest. Said, lol, not us, do not buy. This is at hitpiece.com. You can buy Apologies to the Queen Mary Deluxe Edition NFT. And then Dan also says, please feel free to do targeted harassment of at Join Hitpiece. I agree with that. And so Matt, what's your understanding of what happened here and what the significance might be?
Right. So basically, there's this NFT project called Hit Piece that put up all these artists' songs and albums, and basically said you can bid on an NFT for this stuff, and then you can own it. Now they claim that they were just putting it all up there, and if an artist didn't want to take part, they would have refunded the money to whoever bid on the NFT.
Opt out.
But you have to opt out, right? But it's looking like this is all very purposeful. So that's the thing about this being a fail, because I don't know if this is gonna end up being a fail for them, because there's this old school tech mantra that goes well beyond crypto, where build fast and break stuff. And it's basically like, you have an idea, you want to get it out to market as quickly as possible. Don't care about breaking the law. Don't care about fucking up people's shit. Just get it out there, get a user base. And then you can, once you're sort of too big to fail within the tech market that you're in, then you can just start fixing stuff as you go along. I mean, we've seen this happen with all sorts of major companies. It's worked. Facebook, for example, how often we found that their platform was hurting entire groups of people. Look at what they did to the misinformation spreading in Myanmar. You just get whatever you can out there and be a big success, and then deal with all the aftermath and the negatives after.
Yeah, it's easier to say sorry than ask permission.
Right. But of course, maybe that works for like I don't know, like some bullshit like video game or something where it's pure hobby and whatever. But when you're dealing with people's livelihoods, when you're dealing with people's actual lives, you got a problem. And Hit Piece basically made the calculation that they were going to use Spotify's API to basically pull in every single artist's album and set up NFTs for all of them.
That's what's so amazing about it, though, is because we talk about how lazy like the apes and like it's basically just clip art with elements to swap in and out. It's like this time let's just scrape Spotify and put up all that stuff, and just it's insane how little effort they want to put into this scam. I mean, it's respectable, honestly.
Right. Imagine your product is just taking other people's shit, slapping a sticker on it and saying it's mine and selling it. I want to be clear here too, because we sort of jumped right into NFTs, and I don't know how familiar your audience is with them, but when you buy an NFT, let's say you buy an NFT of a Bored Ape, congratulations, you have a lot of fucking money. But if you do that, you're not actually buying that image. This isn't even like you always see NFT advocates say it's sort of like the old art world. Well, when you buy a painting, you get the actual painting. With this, you basically get ownership over a string of characters that acts as the receipt for your purchase of a Bored Ape picture on the blockchain. It basically is a token that points to the URL where your image, in this case, the Bored Ape, lives. You don't. So we're not even talking about copyright. You don't own the copyright for these things. First of all, you should know that.
Some of them don't.
A lot of NFT people are buying this shit thinking they could go around and like. So there was a DAO, which is like a crypto crowdfunding type scheme, where basically all these people throw in their crypto for like a mega purchase, and ostensibly they all get voting rights to decide what happens to this purchase once they make it. In this case, they auctioned off Christie's, or one of the big auction houses auctioned off like this rare copy of this Dune book, and they won it for much more than it was supposed to go for. Like they basically bid against themselves and pumped the price up on their own. And they believed, after winning this copy of this rare Dune book, that they then had the rights to use the book to make a movie on it. Which, let me tell you, if you go to a used bookstore and purchase a book, for folks who don't know, you don't automatically get the rights to that book. You should know that. I don't want anyone, going to,
But
buy
Matt,
a 90
what if it's a hard to find book? Do I own the rights to it then?
No, I'm sorry. Listen, if you find like an old foil Charizard card, which is very hard to find, I've heard, you don't suddenly get the rights to print up Charizard everywhere and sell Charizard T-shirts and memorabilia. If you do, Nintendo will definitely be calling. Let me tell you. Don't go minting Mickey Mouse. Well, actually, if you're an NFT person, do go mint and Mickey Mouse on the blockchain.
Yes.
I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to Hit Piece. So they've basically made this calculated decision that we're going to do this, and we'll get hit with DMCAs, and there'll be takedown requests, and we might get sued. But if we can make more money pumping out the NFTs, that by the time it gets to the point where maybe this could shut us down, we'd be too big. This would be just normal. People will be and they're betting on, and this is the plan here. They're betting on not every artist being so staunchly moralistic and anti-NFT, or just like, even if they don't know anything about NFTs, how dare you use what's my creative work? Not everyone's going to be like that. Some people, and I'm betting a large portion of them, some artists will see their stuff being sold on these NFT markets and say, holy shit, there's something I'm obviously missing here. Let me contact Hit Piece and sign the deal and just take my whatever percentage I get so I don't miss out. I don't want to be left behind of the next big tech thing. I mean, this is not some small thing either. There's been, so far from what I've seen, there's some big record execs behind this thing.
Right.
Like people who actually know the music industry.
They know what rights are, right?
Yeah. Like this wasn't like an accidental thing, like put together one weekend by some college programmer who's, just, I had an idea and I just wanted to see if it will work. No, this isn't like some fun weekend project. This is they have funding. I think like $5 million funding they received. They had a launch party with some pretty big signed to mainstream label artists a couple of months ago. Yeah. And they're making a very calculated ploy that we will get into legal trouble. We'll be inundated with takedowns, but in the end, it'll all work out.
Do you think it will?
I mean, I think it could. I mean, maybe if the blowback from this is so big that no one will want to touch it because it became, just the brand became so toxic. But I don't know. I mean, look at OpenSea. They put out that's the one of the major marketplaces for NFTs. They basically had put out a platform they created where anyone could mint an NFT for free, ostensibly hoping that, everyone will want to mint NFTs of their artwork, and then they'll want to sell it on our marketplace. So, we give this free platform to them, and then they'll sell it on our marketplace, and we'll make money from this, this free product. They ended up having to make some major changes to it because 80% of what was being minted on their free NFT platform were people stealing shit and minting what wasn't theirs. And they just stopped taking shit down once it was put on their marketplace because it just took too much time and effort because so much of what's on OpenSea is fraudulent.
Right. I mean, that's the wonder of decentralization. Like, I'm glad so many corporations like Walmart and Goldman Sachs are, seeing the light on it. It's
right. And of course, decentralization, where, all this stuff is funneled into, with NFTs, all this stuff is basically funneled into one marketplace. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this, but, Twitter launched that new avatar feature they have where if you have an NFT, if you own an NFT, you can confirm it that you own it through Twitter's platform now, and then you could make the official. They'll put like a little sticker where it shows on your avatar that your avatar picture is the official version of that NFT. Well, the day Twitter launched that, OpenSea went down. They were having server issues, taking down all the images of those NFTs with them, meaning that when Twitter launched that new feature, they couldn't grab all those NFT pictures from OpenSea's API. Very decentralized, very cool.
Well, I actually one final question, Matt. Who is this for? You know, we've covered Bitcoin stuff a few times, and like I think we cover it from like the politics angle of it. And I do think I think Gerard's good at good at laying it out, but there's more needs to be done to get people before they like almost like consumer protection at this point, right? Like, how do you view the mission of your show?
Right. So, I don't know everything about this space. It's too fucking complicated. So I wanted to put together a show that made this very accessible. Someone who knows a good portion of it, but still has a lot of questions, speaking to experts who can tell me. I'm going to have people who advocate for this stuff because I think there's no better way to sort of understand it than to get those people who try to pump it. And, I think that'll also help people understand exactly what they're trying to do. But that's another thing. But also, I think a lot of the discussion around it is also sort of, again, so focused on because I think that it is a very smart thing they did, where just throw all this tech stuff out there and people are forced trying to explain that. I think we should look at what the societal implications of this all are. What is the politically, culturally, what is this going to do to us in the year 2022 and beyond? What we're seeing now with this push for Web3, we're basically seeing all these tech venture capitalists putting out all these platforms that want to commodify everything. You play video games for fun. Not anymore. You're going to need a certain number of a specific game's tokens to be able to afford the rare character to play as. And then once you do that, the goal of the game will be to create more capital, more money for yourself so you can take part in the next level. Every little thing is going to be commodified. You want not just you want to own everything, and not just you want to own everything. You can own something of somebody else's. Everything will be owned by someone. It's like the complete reverse of the direction we should be going into. I mean, what was the original idea for the internet? This open space where knowledge was free, where we can ostensibly go online and find out anything, connect to anyone. And yes, of course, there's been a lot of companies who facilitated this and made a lot of money. But, at the crux of it, look at Wikipedia is a great example. Where else can you find that? Where else can you find? Yep. Yeah, where else can you find just this unbelievable source of basically knowledge about anything you could ever want to know about? And then on top of that, a whole system, a whole line of extremely knowledgeable people in their field who volunteer their time to make sure that Wikipedia is accurate and ethical and giving people what they want. I mean, it really is a great example. And of course, I'm sure if I believe I might have seen something, but I'm sure if it isn't already being done, there's going to be someone out there trying to commodify Wikipedia too.
Right. Yeah. Wikipedia NFTs.
Right.
It's creating scarcity where there doesn't have to be scarcity. I mean, that's the crime.
I mean, the Internet Archive I've seen has been getting into this stuff. Firefox, which is ostensibly a company that cares about, the open internet. It's so bizarre, especially the Internet Archive. It's really weird to see this organization that believes that, all this information that was online should be preserved in some way so we don't lose it again. Get involved. Oh, give me 1 second.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick on that. Like I've been while you're fixing that, I've been really annoyed by like pirate party people in like Scandinavia and stuff like that embracing this stuff because like motherfucker, this is the exact opposite. We're determining ownership 3 times over instead of the abolition of those sorts of like control things. I'll tell you what, LibGen, the place where you can get any book, has done way more for society than all this crypto shit will ever do. And I think it's really annoying when people who should fucking know better go down this route.
Right. And I was saying about Internet Archive, like imagine you're an organization that wants to preserve everything on the internet for everyone to enjoy long after servers go down and websites hosting expires. And imagine getting into something that basically promotes the idea of creating fake scarcity.
Yeah.
Like that's what this all is. Like there's no reason we've seen it with people who right click NFTs. There's no reason we all can't have a picture of Bored Ape number 225. There's no reason. It's a digital photo.
Yeah.
It's not like a painting where only one physical original version exists. We can all have the original Bored Ape.
Yeah. You know, and that's the thing is like this idea that the blockchain, this like you can have this, it's 3-factor counting. It's going to be as revolutionary as the internet. It's fucking not. All that low hanging, all that juice from that can be changed from like figuring out who owns what in the most technical way. That was two entry accounting. That was like 500 fucking years ago. 2 different notebooks keeping track inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
Right? That's where that like 3-factor, like it's kind of cool theoretically to have this independent thing that's burning down the Amazon rainforest to like make sure we know who owns what fucking JPEGs. But like it's not, there's not the like people compared to the internet are fucking fools.
Right. I mean, I hope what I'm hoping with this, what I can do with this show is that basically get more people to understand this. And basically, there are a lot of great crypto critics out there, but I was looking at the, the podcasting space specifically, and like all the shows I was competing with on like the Apple podcast charts and on Spotify, every crypto show is a show pumping it and promoting it and advocating for it. There's no other show that I saw. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of great people writing great stuff that I'm going to now hope to platform onto these mediums where their word is probably, what they're saying is probably not getting out there. Like, there was that great Foldable Humans video on YouTube that came out breaking this all down. And, it has like something like 3 million views now. That just shows you that even in the YouTube space, people were really dying for a really well put together crypto takedown, and he was able to do it. But 3 million views in I think it's 12 days on a 2-hour long crypto breakdown. Like that's incredible. People want to understand this stuff, and we have to make sure they're being funneled in a direction that's looking at things critically.
And it's so frustrating with all these fucking celebrities, all these people are pointing people who are anxious about their financial futures towards absolute vapor.
That's the thing that's so nasty about it is like when you get the big claims, it's like, well, this is a financial tool that will help, working class people or marginalized communities make some money. And it's like, there is no doubt about it that some people have made a lot of money doing this. There's also a lot of people who have lost money. And just because you can bet on a speculative asset and it might reward you personally does not necessarily mean that this is any kind of societal solution, right? Yeah. If you want to make a good bet, put some money into oil companies, right? They are extremely it's horrible, but you know what I'm saying?
The left needs to invest in oil.
And you would be laughed out of a room if you were saying that, what we need to do? We need to be encouraging more poor and working class people to be putting money into Exxon and Shell, right? And rightfully so. And the thing is with, and I will say this, at least with those companies, at least they're providing something that powers people's cars to get from place to place. Absolutely evil corporations, don't get me wrong.
That's civilizationally important.
Right. That's what another funny thing. Crypto advocates will usually put a chart together showing how much power Bitcoin mining takes up compared to a global conglomerate natural resource powered that literally runs full-blown economies, and they'll be like, see, Bitcoin only takes up 50% of what they take up. I mean,
for nothing,
I saw two of those. I love these. These are my favorite example because they think they're proving something, but it's it only uses 1/50th of the energy of air travel globally. That is fucking insanely significant industry. And then there's another one. It's it only uses about the same amount of energy as Americans' dryers, as if it's a trivial thing that every
social reproduction.
Dryer, yeah, exactly. Every fucking dryer in America that you use. I don't have a dryer. I live in New York. I wish I miss having a dryer. But every fucking dryer running, Bitcoin doesn't dry your socks. It doesn't get you from Paris to New York. It doesn't do shit other than maybe you can flip it onto the next fucking idiot for a nice increase in actual cash flow.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a utility to this. I wish we were talking about something that actually was like the future. I know that's another thing. Like people, that's another thing we usually hear from them, where it's like, oh, people poo-pooed on the internet back in the '90s too and thought it was temporary. I mean, I didn't. I'm not someone who's usually anti new technology. I mean, I look at it critically. I mean, I can like, I think Facebook's whole metaverse thing is a complete ridiculous marketing ploy, and I think the idea that we're all going to be living in a metaverse is ridiculous. But I see utility to VR.
Right.
I see utility to AR. There is a place where I can see that this can become a part of life in certain sectors. There's no utility at all to this whole Web3 crypto industry. Yes. It's just pure asset speculation being foisted upon us as something more than that. And listen, if these people just said, hey, go buy a scratch off lotto ticket, go buy, go to Vegas and throw all your money on the tables, play some poker, craps, whatever. That's what crypto is. Cool. You know what? Fine. Yeah. People want to gamble. We get to talk about regulations and things like that when it comes to gambling, and the harm it causes. But whatever, it's legal, and it is what it is. And to say it's gambling, but they don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the closest this thing is gambling. I don't even think you compare it to the stock market because
you can recoup your losses, right? If somebody like defrauds you on the stock market, you can recoup your losses.
There's also
Bernie Madoff, for example, like he's a very famous like financial fraudster, right? They have recouped the losses for the people. I think it's like something like 87% now of the people who like lost money on it have been recouped for what they put into it. Like, so the losses that they endured under like one of the most famous like financial fraud schemes of our lifetime. Right. But if you accidentally send a Bitcoin to the wrong person, or if you get sold a bunch of snake oil shit, you buy a shit coin or NFT, an NFT that you think that you're buying, as stupid as it might be, as much as you might think that you're buying like the rights to Dune, right? And you get defrauded on the
Constitution.
That, right? Like in a normal kind of circumstance, you could find ways to recoup your losses. With this, you can't, and that's what's something that's so sinister about it too.
Right? There's no regulation here either. Like all we need, literally, all we need to do is for a bunch of whales who hold up the majority of Bitcoin, for example, because listen, we talk about all these different crypto, and I talk about the NFT space and meme coins and altcoins and decentralized finance platforms. All this shit is pegged to Bitcoin. I mean, just look at Coinbase or any other platform that tracks the space and how much every coin is worth, where you can make trades. Track this shit. Everything is pegged to how Bitcoin does. Bitcoin goes up, the whole marketplace goes up. Bitcoin goes down, the whole space goes down. Everything is pegged to Bitcoin. And all you need is a bunch of whales to decide one day that, fuck this shit, I'm out. And they sell off. And I wonder how much money is even actually there, because we didn't even get into Tether and how much Bitcoin is basically being manipulated by this fake money, literally money being printed up. Like I spoke about how important political ideology is to all this. Libertarians love this shit. Their number one argument against the U.S. Treasury, right, is that they just printed up money and hurting the economy by just printing up all this money. Literally, whenever Bitcoin's in trouble, the company behind Tether just prints up all this fucking Tether. You literally can track how much Tether's being printed up, literally billions of dollars in Tether's being printed up, basically to buy Bitcoin and prop up the price. And Tether is supposed to be backed by one US dollar. We know from their own books that it's not the case. And
but ideally it'd be nice.
Yes, but it would be amazing that they were generating so much money where they would be able to print billions of dollars in Tether and backing up all those with billions of actual US dollars. But,
fake it till you make it.
Right. But so one day, if enough people want to sell off, they'll want to sell off, and there won't be enough actual US dollars to return to them. And that's when this whole thing's going to really, that's when the bubble will really burst. Because, you may see that Bitcoin is selling for 35,000, 45,000, 60,000, whatever it's at. If you want to cash out, a lot of that fucking Bitcoin. You think all that money is just sitting there? It's not. It's not at all.
Yeah, the reserves of these fucking scammers. Well, Matt, where can people find you and follow the show?
Scameconomy.com. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube at youtube.com/Matt Binder for the video version. Much like how you guys do. It's like me talking with a guest live. And I take calls on the post show. So if you're a crypto advocate who wants to call in, I had some of those in the very first episode. I talk to anyone about this stuff. And you can also check out my other show, Doomed, which talks about right-wing media and what's going on in that world with the different conspiratorial groups and extremist groups at doomedcast.com. It's also at youtube.com/Matt Binder. Yeah, I mean, that's where you can find me.
Absolutely. Well, I highly recommend Matt's work. He does great work on Doomed. Very good at picking beats. Everyone knows his. He was early on the beats, meaning like a reporter, not
right.
Like you're in Ableton. But was on the Gamergate stuff very early on, back when I was just a Majority Report listener. So, Matt, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. An absolute pleasure to join you guys on this show. I think this is my first time, right, on Left Reckoning.
It is, man.
It
awesome.
is,
love it. Had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Matt.
See you around.
Take care.
All right, that was good.
All right.
Do we need to take a break? How are you doing?
We could go. Just give me 1 second.
Okay,
if you want to tell people about what we're doing on the post game side.
Okay, yeah, I got a couple things. If you need to check out here, one thing that I'm going to be talking about is this amazing clip of Blake Masters, a guy I'm calling Master Blakes. He's the new Peter Thiel-backed candidate, I think in Arizona. I'll figure out maybe where he's from later, but he's talking with Madison Cawthorn about how much of a statesman Joe Manchin is, and I just want to get a close eye. I'm really concerned about this realignment that's been happening, where there's a bipartisan consensus to stomp on workers and not spend rich people's money. Should we? Let's see, Leonard Peltier.
And we got our Leonard Peltier segment, yeah. So I mean, this is Leonard Peltier is somebody's whose story has been extremely meaningful to my life. I mean, it's been something that once I was first aware of it, it really opened up a lot of kind of political doors and perspectives, and it really breaks my heart. Frankly, to still be talking about this case and begging for his freedom from a government who were involved in the prosecution have now admitted that the case had very, very serious red flags and called for his freedom. And twice now, we've seen Democratic administrations. I mean, not more, but in a time where you thought maybe something would be finally done about it, just sort of turned their back. I'm going to go through the story, who Leonard Peltier was, and what this really means. But I highly suggest that people who are watching this and are motivated for it, finding ways to get involved. I mean, literally going out and just spreading awareness. Free Leonard Peltier hashtag, the Leonard Peltier Defense Fund, and organizations like that are worth, in the Leonard Peltier International Defense Fund are worthwhile to check out, because it does seem like there's a lot of momentum on this right now, particularly because Leonard Peltier just was tested positive for COVID. And let me read this quote here, and then I'll take y'all through the story. This is a statement that he released last Friday, where he says, "I'm in hell, and there's no way to deal with it but to take it as long as you can." He has been, again, in his own words, left alone without attention. This is like a torture chamber for the sick and old because of COVID protocols in the prison that he is in. He's essentially held, and he's been held in solitary confinement for years upon years now. And because of COVID protocols, he's been denied even the small amount of time where he was able to interact with people and get outside of his cell. He desperately needs people on the outside to be speaking up for this, not only because it's an injustice to him, but his political persecution is meant to kind of instill fear in Native American and indigenous activists in the United States and around the world.
Yeah, there's no legal experts that actually think that he's responsible for the murders. The FBI was pissed that two other guys got off because the state of North Dakota was, or I think it was North Dakota judge, maybe I'm misremembering that, but was willing to consider the wider context of that there were fucking violent goon squads, driving around with guns and shooting people. And I mean, this is really like, does the Joe Biden administration, and we're finding out, I mean, hopefully he does something. I agree, like, and send like maybe a form letter to your representative if you got a decent one. Is Biden as lacking in courage as his predecessors when it comes to righting a wrong that a lawless FBI and lawless law enforcement in this country want to continue? Because they want him in jail, caged with coronavirus for the message that it sends to folks. He's arrested when he was 33. That's how old I am now. He's been there.
He's 77,
right? And it's because of the message. Same with Mumia Abu Jamal. Like that, they're in there because of the message. Again, like you look at this stuff legally, everyone's like, yeah, this is bullshit. They're there for the message.
So let me tell his story because it really highlights a lot of this radical history that is so critical to understand why this is so important. Leonard Peltier, like many other people in his generation, he grew up through this horrible period of termination. We're learning so many horrible stories about what's going on in the United States. It is still going on, but we're finding these mass grave sites in Canada and also investigating them in the United States as well. Leonard Peltier, like many of the other members of AIM, was one of these children who was taken away and was forced to unlearn their language, was forced to practice Christianity, was taken away from their culture and their community and their family. And then was sort of forced off into the world with no protections. This is what termination was. The idea was that they were going to finally complete the cultural genocide against the indigenous peoples to this continent. It was an absolutely brutal policy that still has effects on people around today. In response to this, Leonard Peltier joined up with organizations like AIM, the American Indian Movement. And it's worthwhile to note that Peltier was not just sort of like a passive member of these organizations. He participated in the occupation of Alcatraz. Alcatraz sits on native land that is actually stipulated in a treaty. To belong to native peoples. So AIM went and they occupied the site, demanding that it was returned to native people. Leonard Peltier was also, I believe, present at the AIM occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs in DC. And when they occupied that building, one that was an extremely embarrassing moment for the government because this mass movement of people that was extremely sympathetic was showing the brutality of the American government. And when they were inside of the BIA, the AIM movement found documents and records that cataloged a program of forced sterilization of Native American women. I mean, this is some of the most disgusting examples of modern day continuation of the genocide against Native peoples, right? So there's this massive movement in the 70s where people are rising up, and there was a lot of political support for them because people were realizing, because so many people didn't recognize, because of policies like termination, what was happening in Indian country and what was happening to the people who were sort of forced into sterilization and this cultural genocide, right? So this is a very important moment that later sort of boils over into an armed conflict between the United States government and AIM and Wounded Knee, a site of another massacre by the U.S. Army only a century before. But essentially, to give people the short version of it, there's a lot that this is one of those things that I highly suggest people spend some time to educate themselves about AIM. Maybe we should do an entire show on it as well. But there's just so much to get into that we can't get. We don't want to get too distracted. But what's happening here is on the Pine Ridge Reservation, which is still in a state of severe disrepair and underfunding today. There was essentially a elected government, but it was effectively an organized gang with the the collaboration of the local U.S. government authorities and the FBI to basically hold down and to abuse people within that community. And these kind of gangs of people, what they called, the goons, would go around and they would harass folks, particularly people who were involved in AIM. Eventually, this goes into a huge occupation and armed conflict with the government. That was a very famous moment in American history. It's like one of the few times that there have been tanks leveraged against American citizens in recent memory. This occupation happens as a huge embarrassment for the FBI and the U.S. government in general. And I just want to note here that collective punishment is rightly considered a violation of human rights. And following the occupation of Wounded Knee, we saw this mass collective punishment of people in Pine Ridge, members of the Pine Ridge community. They faced this reign of terror from Dick Clark, who was the kind of appointed by the U.S. government and U.S. Government allies authority figure in the region. Around 64 people were murdered in Pine Ridge. Their murders were never investigated. We still don't know what happened there. And during this period of time, Leonard Peltier is tried under these dubious charges. What is he charged for? While these goons are sort of wandering around and harassing people, and as I was alleging earlier, people were being found dead, Leonard Peltier and a few other people were on a location near Pine Ridge. And there's a long story that goes into this, but effectively some people show up with guns and start firing at you in your household in a period of time when folks were in high alert. Some people return fire, and there's a shootout that goes on for a period of time.
Nobody's in uniform, I should also say.
Nobody's in uniform, unmarked, unannounced. Some people show up outside your house and they start firing at you. Again, in a climate where people have been being murdered in their homes, in a climate where people are being intimidated and beat by Dick Clark and other kind of dubious and despicable characters. So again, this is America, right? What happened to the right to defend yourself? Anyway, people involved run and they run and they run. And Leonard Peltier actually ends up on the other side of the border. A few people get tried in the Dakotas, and they end up getting let off scot-free because the charges against them were so dubious and so absurd that even the kind of American judge was able to recognize that there were significant problems with the American case here. Then Leonard Peltier is basically promised that if he comes back to the United States, he will not be charged. Big lie. He gets arrested immediately, and he does not face. He does not sit in front of the same judge or the same kind of fair trial that these first people got. Effectively, the FBI completely fabricates this case against him, particularly the weapons that they ended up claiming that were used to fire the bullet that killed the officer. They use falsified evidence to try to make it seem like it came from a gun that Leonard Peltier owned. They also forced and intimidated a woman in the community who Leonard Peltier had never known to present herself as his girlfriend and say that, basically give testimony that made it seem like Peltier had one, committed the murders, and two, had intent. That person has now recanted that testimony, saying that she was threatened by them, and members of her family were threatened by them as well. Despite all of this, Leonard Peltier continues to sit in prison. Again, we're saying now he was 33 when he went into prison. He's 77 now. He's now spent the vast majority of his life in prison, more life behind bars, more lives in a cage than as a free man. And for what? Not because the FBI was looking for justice, not because the U.S. government had a legitimate case against somebody, but because they wanted to show somebody as they wanted to make a threat. They wanted to make an example of Peltier to try to tamp down the American Indian movement because they were afraid of what was happening when more and more people across the country were seeing the injustices of what's going on in Indian country and seeing the injustices of the cultural and physical genocide against Native American people. And I just want to add two last things on this because we have some really good clips we're going to go to as well. But I want to read this quote here because this is the shit that drives me crazy about it. I made that case because that's the right case, right? That's the case that we have from the facts. And we've known these facts for a long time. Hell, we knew them going into this case. But now the people who were involved in the prosecution, the people who were involved in the case have come forward and they have said, yeah, this guy should be let free. So this is one of the former FBI agents on the case. Former agent John C. Jack Ryan wrote in a letter, "In my opinion, the circumstances surrounding the case in combination with the passage of 4 decades of time serve support his request to live his final years at home." And this is going back to 2017, by the way, y'all. James Reynolds, who was the U.S. attorney on the case, right? This is the guy who brings the case against him. This is the guy who spent time studying it, prosecuted it. This is what he said. James Reynolds, U.S. attorney on the case. "You're not really participating in the crime yourself." He's talking about Leonard Peltier. "Just because you're there, you're going to get nailed." Reynolds has added, he didn't go out there with the intention to kill anybody. He was trying to protect his people. And many, many other people, and I believe Reynolds himself, have signed letters saying that it is time to end. James Reynolds, former U.S. attorney on the case, has come forward and said that Leonard Peltier should be freed. Right at this point, the case itself speaks on its own 2 feet, but we now have the people involved saying that, hey, this guy should be freed. And the cowardice that we saw from Obama when he refused to free him, when he absolutely could have, is despicable. And Biden should show some backbone. And again, I wanted to remind people, because we're giving you all a lot of information here, why these figures are so important. This is Leonard in his own words, if you have that video, talking about his life. And I believe this is in 2001 from a Free Speech TV interview that he did on political prisoners.
One of the things I learned when I was traveling around is that I always thought, growing up on a reservation, I always thought it was just Indian people that were being mistreated, right? I became a migrant worker for a while. I started with my uncle and we started following the crops, the fruit crops. And I was down in California and by Sacramento. And we were down by this river. And all of these migrant workers that I seen were poor white people. And some of the treatment that I seen them receive from the local law enforcement agencies and the townspeople, the business people, it was quite a shock to me. I just couldn't believe that other people were being mistreated and treated the way I had or my people had been treated, right? So my education began to advance and realizing that the enemy is only going to creating one class of people. And if you're not that class of people, he's going to mistreat you. And that's the middle class and upper middle class people in the United States. But that whole era, that whole lifespan that I went through was very educational. In an area that was sad. It was very sad to see the treatment that I've seen some people being treated, especially my people, I mean, I've seen my people killed. I've seen my people. I've seen police brutality that was sickening. I mean, made Rodney King beating look like a slap on the wrist. There's one incident that we fought so hard for to get these police officers arrested. Was in Seattle, Washington. They were with the canine department of the police station, right? They were training their dogs, so they went up to this hotel where all the Indians stayed. Sure, these were Indian alcoholics, winos and stuff. But they went in, kicked the doors down, and sicked their dogs on them, tore these people all up. I mean, that was just evil cruelty, But things like that that's what I was against. That's what I wanted to see change. I wanted to right to be able to walk the street and not be mistreated because my hair was black and my skin was brown. Or if I looked like an Indian or a Mexican or wherever, you know, I wanted to be able to go into a store and buy whatever I wanted. I wanted to be able to have a job wherever I wanted to, wherever I was qualified for.
Yeah, that was Leonard Peltier again in 2001. 21 more years in prison, and from all the reports that we've gotten, his treatment has only gotten worse, and he's been moved further and further and further away from his ancestral lands. The last that I knew, he was in Florida, and again now he has COVID. It's 44 years. Leonard Peltier is a political prisoner. The people involved have asked for him to be freed. This is as simple as it gets. You can do the right thing, Joe Biden. Let Leonard Peltier go.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to also note that the treatment of all prisoners in this country, the #1 jailer of any country on earth, has been horrendous too. And we should probably do some coverage on that more broadly. But
no doubt about it.
Have some courage, Joe. I'd love to be surprised. I would love, nothing would make me happier than being surprised.
I'm very encouraged. I want to bring the weight of this story. So, you know, I don't want to do it as an uplifting kind of thing up front, but there has been a lot of movement from people like Danny DeVito and Susan Sarandon, who continue time and time again to fearlessly champion the right causes, despite all the flack that they get from the nastiest little critters in the media. But beyond that, there have been a lot of movements in politics. A lot of Native officials and elected officials particularly have, now that there's more representation in government than we've ever seen, have been trying to bring this case up. But we need a lot more, and we need more eyes on this. And, you know, hopefully this uprising that we've been seeing in response to him catching COVID and the horrible treatment that he's faced, we can leverage that. And so this is a time right now, if you have the ability, if you can think of any way to, you know, increase people's awareness of this, as Matt was saying, I think sending letters is great. You know, bring this to Joe Biden. This is an easy win at this point, that he can get. And I desperately want to see Leonard Peltier walk free.
It'd be incredible.
Well, on this, we have something else. This is another member of AIM, Vernon Bellecourt, who was a member of AIM and you know, a freedom fighter in his own way. We found this really great clip here. This is from Bernie Sanders' old public access show when he was mayor of Burlington, and this is just talking about the kind of justice of the indigenous struggle in general, but also its international angle. And I figured it was worthwhile sharing. I think this is from 1987 here.
And some of the contradictions that I like to focus on is the fact that here in the United States, the United States continues to pass laws to force the Navajo people from their land at Big Mountain. We just filed a suit in the U.S. Supreme Court 3 days ago through the assistance of Michael Ratner of the Center for Constitutional Rights. It was in the New York Times yesterday, on the White Earth Chippewa Reservation in northern Minnesota. In the 99th Congress, they passed a law that expropriates more than 200,000 acres of our land without our consent or without compensation. Our people are struggling to recover the sacred Black Hills, which they see as their Mecca, their sacred shrines, and they're having a great deal of difficulty doing that. So the point that I always try to emphasize is that there's no doubt that the American war against the indigenous people in the United States continues. Certainly it's not the Gatling gun and the saber, but it's the Congress of the United States and various federal courts making rulings that adversely affect us.
Tell us, because again, I think about views on my circuit, and I'm not as aware of and understand as much as I should. What is the economic condition of the American Indian now in the United States?
Well, no doubt, the people who first gave sanctuary to immigrants from all over the world who came here to flee from economic, spiritual, political persecution in their own countries reversed their role almost immediately, and the oppressed peoples of the world became the oppressor. And down through the years, for nearly 500 years, obviously, it's been a constant war to push us further and further from our sacred lands. Consequently, in a country where we, as the original landholders, I say landholders, we never thought we could own Mother Earth, should in fact be doing quite well. But we're at the bottom of every economic indicator in education, healthcare, housing, water systems. People who have visited some reservations said that they almost thought they were in a third world country in Central America, because essentially, over the years, the federal government, who's supposed to protect our lands and resources, have allowed its exploitation and not to our benefit. In other words, we have remained locked into long cycles of poverty, which breeds all the other problems that we are faced with. So the condition across the board is not good at all.
Yeah, and the real tragedy there is this is 87, and in Pine Ridge, you could still say the same thing about the state that it's in. Remember that the memory and the commitment of the American government to treaties that they've signed with other nations, the native nations of this continent, they always start to become less and less important when they find copper or nice minerals or uranium. As we're seeing these continued fights all across the country to respect ancestral, sacred, and also treaty designated lands. People were forced off of the most profitable lands, right? The lands that had the most resources, and put into lands that did not have the same capacity. Pine Ridge is an example of this, right? And as a part of that, the United States government was supposed to provide food, health care, and adequate lodging to those people. See what the U.S. government provides. Go online and see what the United States government provides to the people of Pine Ridge. It is despicable to do that to people. They send them food that has been expired, and they refuse to upgrade and update people's homes, even as they fall into disrepair. And it's truly a crisis that has just been going on for centuries at this point. But it's really nice I highly suggest if people could find it, maybe we could get a link to it for folks. The entire conversation with Sanders and Vernon there is a really interesting one, because it's primarily focused on the question of Nicaragua and the indigenous movements in Bolivia, and how they might sort of show a different way of building power and building a kind of socialism. And I think that socialists in this country should take it upon themselves to make sure that the real fight, the material fight for indigenous peoples, is a part of your vocabulary and your movement, and not just in a kind of symbolic way that is becoming very popular with a lot of kind of liberals and corporations today.
An aesthetic kind of way. Yeah, exactly. Well, anything we want to hit before we head into the post game, David?
No, I think that's going to be it for tonight. But we got a lot coming to the post game. We got Matt's got some good stuff. We got everyone's favorite Marx genius, James Lindsay. We have him sort of breaking down Marxism for us, so that'll be very helpful for us all to understand the true path. And we'll be taking people's phone calls and questions, so make sure you join us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. Again, we have a phone line. I made posts on Patreon, so you should be able to find that number. I also tweeted it out as well, so I'm very happy to hear from you.
All right, folks. See you in about 15-20 minutes for patrons. Patreon.com/leftreckoning.